As people grow older, something quietly changes inside the mind. Not loudly, not dramatically, but slowly, like the soft shifting of seasons. Seniors who are deep thinkers are not always the ones who speak the most. They are often the ones who pause before responding, who look out of windows longer than necessary, who sit in silence without feeling the need to fill it. Their minds are not empty in those moments. In fact, they are full of memories, patterns, lessons, regrets, gratitude, and questions that no longer need immediate answers. Psychology tells us that deep thinking in older age is not a weakness or a sign of withdrawal. It is often a sign of emotional maturity, cognitive integration, and a lifetime of accumulated understanding. Deep thinking seniors tend to reflect more because their brains have traveled farther. They have experienced love that lasted and love that didn't, trust that was rewarded and trust that was broken, dreams that came true and dreams that quietly faded away. When a senior sits quietly, their mind is not stuck in the past. It is connecting the past to the present, trying to understand what it all meant. Unlike younger minds that often chase speed and stimulation, the older deep thinker seeks meaning. This shift is not accidental. Psychology shows that as people age, the brain prioritizes emotional significance over novelty. That's why seniors often care less about proving themselves and more about understanding themselves. Many deep-thinking seniors are misunderstood. Their silence is mistaken for sadness. Their distance is mistaken for disinterest. But inside, their thoughts are rich, layered, and emotionally complex. They replay conversations not to dwell on pain, but to learn from them. They remember people not to suffer, but to honor what those relationships taught them. Emotional regulation improves with age for many individuals, and deep thinkers feel emotions deeply but express them more selectively. They are not numb. They are careful. They have learned that not every feeling needs to be spoken, and not every truth needs an audience. Psychologically, seniors who are deep thinkers often possess high levels of introspection. Introspection is the ability to look inward honestly, without running away from uncomfortable truths. This is not easy, and it is not common. It requires courage to sit with one's own thoughts, to acknowledge mistakes without self-hatred, and to accept life as it unfolded rather than how one wished it had. Deep-thinking seniors do this naturally, not because life was easy, but because life taught them resilience. They understand that pain, joy, loss, and love are all part of the same human experience. Another defining trait of deep-thinking seniors is their relationship with time. Younger people often feel they have unlimited time, which creates urgency and anxiety at the same time. Seniors, especially deep thinkers, experience time differently. They value it. They respect it. They no longer waste it on unnecessary conflict or meaningless validation. Psychologically, this is linked to what researchers call socio-emotional selectivity. As people age, they become more selective about where they invest their emotional energy. Deep-thinking seniors choose peace over drama, depth over surface-level interactions, and authenticity over approval. Many seniors who think deeply also experience loneliness, but not always in the way people assume. There is a difference between being alone and feeling lonely. Deep thinkers can be alone and still feel emotionally full. However, they can feel lonely even in crowded rooms if conversations lack substance. Their minds crave connection, not noise. This psychological need for meaningful interaction is often unmet, especially in a fast-paced world that values quick talk over thoughtful dialogue. As a result, deep-thinking seniors often retreat, not because they want isolation, but because they are protecting their inner world. Memory plays a powerful role in the psychology of deep-thinking seniors. Their memories are not just snapshots. They are emotional landscapes. A single song can bring back an entire decade. A familiar smell can reopen a forgotten chapter of life. The aging brain tends to recall emotionally significant memories more vividly, and deep thinkers revisit these memories to understand their identity. They ask themselves questions like, who was I then? Who did I become? What truly mattered? These questions are not signs of regret. They are signs of self-reflection. Emotionally, deep-thinking seniors often carry unspoken wisdom. They have learned lessons that cannot be taught in books or explained. In a few sentences, they understand that people change, that life is unfair, and that happiness is not permanent. but neither is pain. This emotional realism allows them to face life with a quiet strength. They may not always appear optimistic, but they are grounded. Psychology recognizes this as emotional resilience, the ability to accept reality without being defeated by it. Deep thinkers in later life also tend to have a heightened awareness of mortality. But this awareness does not always bring fear. Often, it brings clarity. Knowing that time is finite helps them focus on what truly matters. They forgive more easily, not because others deserve it, but because holding on to anger is too heavy to carry anymore. They let go of old grudges not as an act of weakness, but as an act of self-respect. Their psychology shifts from accumulation to release, from gathering experiences to making peace with them. Another important psychological trait of deep-thinking seniors is empathy. Having lived through different roles, child, parent, worker, partner, caregiver, they understand perspectives deeply. They judge less and observe more. They know that everyone is fighting battles that are invisible. This empathy often makes them excellent listeners, even when they don't speak much themselves. When they do speak, their words tend to be thoughtful, measured, and emotionally grounded. Yet, despite their depth, many deep-thinking seniors feel unseen in modern society. The world moves fast, celebrates youth, and often overlooks quiet wisdom. This can create a sense of emotional invisibility. Psychologically, this can lead to withdrawal or sadness if not acknowledged. But many deep thinkers transform this invisibility into inner freedom. They stop seeking validation from a world that doesn't listen and start living according to their own values. This internal shift is one of the most powerful psychological transformations of aging. As this journey continues, the deep-thinking senior begins to understand that life was never about perfection. It was about experience. It was about learning who you are through what you survive. And in this understanding, something beautiful happens. They stop fighting their past. They stop fearing their future. They begin to live more fully in the present moment. Not because everything is perfect, but because everything finally makes sense in its own imperfect way. And this is only the beginning of their psychological depth. As the inner world of a deep-thinking senior continues to evolve, their silence grows heavier with meaning. This silence is not emptiness. It is presence. It is the kind of presence that comes from years of listening more than speaking, observing more than reacting, and understanding that not everything valuable needs to be explained. Psychology tells us that deep thinkers in later life often retreat inward, not because they are disconnected from the world, but because they are deeply connected to themselves. Their minds have become a private sanctuary, a place where memories, emotions, and realizations quietly coexist. Loneliness, however, becomes a complex companion at this stage of life. For deep-thinking seniors, loneliness is rarely about the absence of people. It is about the absence of understanding. They may be surrounded by family, neighbors, or familiar faces, yet still feel emotionally alone. This happens because their thoughts have depth that casual conversation cannot reach. When dialogue stays on the surface, they feel unseen. Psychology recognizes this as emotional loneliness, which is often more painful than physical isolation. Deep thinkers crave connection that feels genuine, reflective, and emotionally safe. Many seniors who think deeply also struggle with overthinking. But this overthinking is different from youthful anxiety. It is slower, heavier, and more reflective. They revisit past decisions not to punish themselves, but to understand the patterns of their lives. They ask questions like, "Did I choose right?" Or "What could I have done differently?" These questions are not signs of regret alone. They are signs of meaning-making. The aging mind seeks coherence. It wants the story of life to make sense before the final chapters are written. Emotionally, deep-thinking seniors often carry grief that was never fully expressed. Grief for people they lost, versions of themselves they outgrew, and opportunities that never came back. Psychology shows that unresolved grief does not always appear as sadness. Sometimes it appears as quietness, fatigue, or emotional distance. Deep thinkers carry this grief gently, like a fragile object they have learned not to drop. They don't always speak about it because words feel insufficient. Silence becomes their language. One of the most misunderstood traits of deep-thinking seniors is their need for solitude. Society often labels solitude as isolation. But for deep thinkers, Solitude is restoration. It is in solitude that they organize their thoughts, calm their emotions, and reconnect with their inner balance. Their brains, having processed decades of experiences, need space to breathe. Psychology supports this, showing that introspective individuals recharge through quiet reflection, rather than constant stimulation. Solitude is not escape. It is self-care. Deep-thinking seniors also develop a strong internal moral compass. They are less influenced by trends, opinions, or external pressure. Their values were shaped by real consequences, not theories. They know what matters because they have lived through what didn't. This psychological stability allows them to remain calm in situations that once caused stress. They no longer argue to win. They choose peace instead. This is not surrender. It is wisdom earned through experience. Emotionally, many deep thinkers feel a quiet sadness when they realize that their insights are rarely asked for. In a world that moves fast, there is little patience for slow wisdom. This can create a sense of emotional neglect. Psychology shows that feeling unvalued can affect self-worth at any age. However, deep-thinking seniors often transform this pain into acceptance. They learn that not everyone is ready to hear the truth, and not every lesson needs to be taught. Sometimes, living quietly with integrity is enough. Memory becomes both a comfort and a challenge in this stage of life. Deep thinkers remember vividly, not just events, but emotions attached to them. A small object can trigger a wave of memories, bringing both warmth and ache. The psychology of memory in aging shows that emotional memories are often preserved, longer than factual ones. Deep-thinking seniors revisit these memories not to escape the present, but to stay connected to who they were. Their identity is woven from these recollections. Another important psychological aspect is emotional sensitivity. Deep-thinking seniors often feel emotions deeply, even if they express them less. They are moved by small gestures, sincere words, and quiet kindness. At the same time, they are easily hurt by indifference. A lack of acknowledgement can feel heavier than criticism. This sensitivity is not weakness. It is emotional awareness refined over time. Their hearts are not hardened. They are careful. Many deep thinkers develop a philosophical outlook on life. They begin to see suffering as part of growth, mistakes as teachers, and endings as transitions rather than failures. Psychology refers to this as cognitive reframing, the ability to reinterpret experiences in a way that reduces emotional pain. Deep-thinking seniors do this naturally. They no longer ask, "Why did this happen to me?" Instead, they ask, "What did this teach me?" This shift brings emotional peace. Trust also changes for deep-thinking seniors. After experiencing betrayal, disappointment, and loss, they become selective about who they let close. This selectivity is not bitterness. It is self-protection. Psychology shows that emotional boundaries strengthen with age. Deep thinkers value emotional safety over social quantity. They prefer one genuine connection over many shallow ones. Their circle becomes smaller, but deeper. There is also a quiet courage in deep-thinking seniors. It takes courage to face life honestly, without illusions. It takes courage to accept aging in a society that fears it. Deep thinkers do not deny their aging. They observe it. They notice changes in their bodies, their energy, their pace, but they do not define themselves by these changes. Psychologically, this acceptance reduces internal conflict and increases emotional stability. Despite their strength, deep-thinking seniors still long for understanding. A single conversation, where someone truly listens, can mean more to them than years of casual interaction. When someone acknowledges their thoughts, their stories, or their silence, it validates their existence. Psychology confirms that feeling heard is a fundamental human need at every stage of life. As their inner world continues to deepen, they begin to let go of unnecessary emotional weight. They release old expectations, forgive themselves for past mistakes, and stop trying to control outcomes. This emotional release does not happen suddenly. It unfolds gradually, like a long exhale after years of holding breath. They realize that peace is not found by fixing everything, but by accepting what cannot be changed. And as this acceptance grows, something shifts inside them. Their thoughts become calmer, their emotions more balanced, and their presence more grounded. They may speak less, but when they do, their words carry weight. They may move slower, but their understanding runs deeper. This is the quiet power of the deep-thinking senior, a power built not on noise, but on meaning. And yet, this journey is not complete. As the journey of the deep-thinking senior reaches its most profound stage, the mind begins to shift from questioning life to understanding it. This is where reflection no longer feels heavy and memories no longer demand answers. Instead, they settle gently, like photographs placed carefully back into an album. Psychology recognizes this stage as integration, the moment when a person no longer separates joy from pain, success from failure, or love from loss. Everything becomes part of one complete story. Deep-thinking seniors reach this stage not because life was kind, but because they learned how to be kind to themselves. At this point in life, many deep thinkers stop asking for explanations from the world. They understand that not every event had a clear reason, and not every outcome was fair. Instead of resisting this truth, they accept it. This acceptance does not come from giving up. It comes from clarity. The mind grows quieter because it no longer fights reality. Psychology shows that this inner peace is linked to reduced emotional conflict and increased life satisfaction, even in the presence of physical limitations or external challenges. Deep-thinking seniors begin to see their lives as a legacy rather than a list of achievements. Legacy, for them, is not about wealth, recognition, or titles. It is about the emotional impact they left behind. They think about the people they helped, the love they gave, the lessons they modeled through their behavior. They realize that their true contribution was not what they owned, but how they lived. This realization brings a deep sense of fulfillment that younger minds often overlook. Emotionally, there is a softening that happens at this stage. Anger loses its grip. Resentment feels unnecessary. The heart becomes lighter not because pain disappeared, but because it was finally understood. Deep thinkers forgive themselves for not knowing what they know now. They release the unrealistic expectations they once placed on their younger selves. Psychology calls this self-compassion, and it is one of the most healing emotional states a person can reach. There is also a quiet gratitude that fills the inner world of deep-thinking seniors. Gratitude not just for the good moments, but for survival itself. They are grateful for the strength that carried them through difficult years, for the lessons hidden inside loss, and for the people who stayed, even briefly. This gratitude is not loud or performative. It is silent, steady, and deeply personal. It lives in the way they appreciate small moments, a calm morning, a familiar voice, a peaceful night. At this stage, deep thinkers develop a new relationship with fear. The fear of judgment fades because they are no longer performing for anyone. The fear of failure fades because they understand that life itself was the experiment. Even the fear of death often changes shape. While uncertainty remains, panic usually does not. Psychology shows that individuals who reflect deeply on life tend to experience less death anxiety because they feel their life had meaning. They may not feel complete, but they feel honest. Many deep-thinking seniors become quiet teachers without realizing it. They teach through presence rather than instruction. Through patience, they show restraint. Through humility, they show wisdom. Through calmness, they show emotional strength. Younger people may not always listen, but they observe. The deep thinker understands that lessons do not need to be forced. Life will teach when the time is right. Emotionally, there is also a deep reconciliation with loneliness. Deep-thinking seniors begin to understand that loneliness is not always an enemy. Sometimes it is a companion that encourages reflection, creativity, and self-awareness. They stop running from it and start listening to it. Psychology suggests that this acceptance reduces emotional suffering and increases inner stability. Loneliness becomes less painful when it is no longer feared. The mind at this stage becomes more present. Deep thinkers stop living heavily in the past or anxiously in the future. They learn to rest in the now, not in excitement, but in peace. The present moment feels enough. This mindfulness is not learned from books or trends. It is earned through experience. After a lifetime of striving, the mind finally rests. Deep-thinking seniors also develop a profound understanding of human nature. They know that people hurt others because they are hurting. They know that love often fails not because it wasn't real, but because people were unprepared. This understanding brings compassion instead of bitterness. Psychology refers to this as emotional intelligence at its highest level, the ability to understand emotions without being controlled by them. There is also an emotional honesty that emerges. Deep thinkers stop pretending. They no longer hide their feelings to appear strong, nor exaggerate them to be seen. They feel what they feel, and that is enough. This emotional authenticity creates inner alignment. When thoughts, emotions, and actions match, psychological tension decreases. Life feels simpler, even if it is not easier. As they look back on life, deep thinking, seniors often realize that their greatest moments were not the loud ones. They were the quiet decisions, the silent sacrifices, the unseen efforts. They understand that meaning was built slowly, through consistency rather than drama. This realization replaces regret with respect for themselves and for their journey. In this final stage, the deep thinker no longer seeks to be understood by everyone. They are content being understood by a few, or even just by themselves. This self-validation is one of the strongest psychological achievements of aging. It means they no longer outsource their worth to external opinions. Their identity is stable, rooted, and peaceful. There is also a sense of completion that begins to form. Not a final ending, but a wholeness. Life no longer feels fragmented into mistakes and successes. It feels like one continuous path, with turns that made sense only in hindsight. Psychology recognizes this as ego integrity, the acceptance of one's life as it was lived. It is the opposite of despair. Deep-thinking seniors often express this state not through words, but through calmness. Their presence feels grounding. Their silence feels safe. Their eyes carry stories without needing to tell them. This is not withdrawal. It is fulfillment. They have said what needed to be said, felt what needed to be felt, and learned what needed to be learned. And in this place, something beautiful happens. Life stops feeling like a race and starts feeling like a reflection. The pressure to become something disappears because they already are. They are the sum of their experiences, their lessons, their love, and their resilience. The psychology of seniors who are deep thinkers is not about sadness, weakness, or decline. It is about depth, integration, and emotional evolution. It is about a mind that has traveled far, learned deeply, and finally found peace in understanding rather than control. And if there is one truth that defines the deep-thinking senior, it is this. They did not just live life. They understood it.